you to protect her.
We're trying to have a baby.
May God have mercy on our souls.
Now repeat after me. I'm unlicensed.
I'm unlicensed. That's terrible.
Louder.
I'm unlicensed, and I don't give a...
We need guns. We need boats. We need them. Are you ready to get your freak on? What? That came out wrong. Not together. With us. That also came out wrong.
Now let's go do what we do and blow some things up.
I would make a great mother, don't you think?
I think
would make
you,
a great
yes.
Mother? Thank you. It must be your powerful asexuality that makes you such a good listener.
Can we just acknowledge that not only are we safe, this really feels like a new beginning.
Aloha! This is Trinidad, the Island Man, your Island Man, coming to you live once again from beautiful Hawaii here on the island of Oahu, bringing you, yes you, the best movie reviews on the entire island of Oahu. And yes, this is Trinidad, the Island Man, your Island Man. And Wednesday night, I know I'm a little late with my review. Wednesday night, I went and I saw the new movie that's out for the weekend, The Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard. And, well, without further ado, remember our rating scale, shock a thumbs up, it's good to see, I recommend it. Shock a thumbs down, it's junk, I don't recommend it. And for the Hitman's Bodyguard's wife, wait, yeah, the Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard. I guess that would be a different movie. The Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard. It is a shock a thumbs up. Now, this movie stars an amazing cast of actors. Ryan Reynolds, Samuel L. Jackson, Salma Hayek, all return from the first movie. And part two definitely gives Salma Hayek, a much larger role, a much greater piece of this comedy and action, which we know that she can do all the way from Desperado and Desperado 2. That being said, it does have a little bit of some slow moments in the movie. Basically about the first 10 minutes, you've seen it in the trailer where he's at this therapy session with a psychologist, this woman, and he's cracking jokes about, not being able to reach his back to his AAA status of bodyguardness, which, like from the first movie, he had lost. And apparently from the first movie, he still had not regained. But that entire banter, the dry humor of this, this English psychologist or psychotherapist is just, I think, a real miss with the audience, especially the American audience. Maybe British, the dry British humor that the therapist provides will go over better in other parts of the world. But to me, that entire first 10 minutes of Ryan Reynolds' banter with this psychologist during this therapy session is inconsequential and could have been just entirely cut from the movie. The movie could have been 10 minutes shorter. They could have filled it up with something much, much better. That's my opinion. But once it gets past that, and once we get into the story where Salma Hayek reaches out to Ryan Reynolds to help rescue her husband, Samuel L. Jackson, very much like the first movie again, he rushes over to help her save him, Samuel L. Jackson, from being abducted by these mercenaries, apparently. And in doing so, they become intertwined in a far larger conspiracy slash plot of an Interpol sting organization set up against a powerful villain played by Antonio Bandera, who could be literally straight out of a James Bond movie in far as scope and scale of his destruction of Europe and the European Union in order to get Greece back into prominence, the great status that it once was during the cradle of civilization. So apparently in this movie, Antonio Banderas is of Greece descent and is a wealthy Greek businessman or entrepreneur that wishes to reestablish Greece's dominance upon not only the world, but especially Europe. And we can see that Antonio Banderas would make an excellent James Bond villain just by the scope and the grandeur of his plans to decimate all of Europe in order to save and promote Greece, his home city and country. And basically, that is the gist of the movie. And that's when it is most at its explosive, action-packed part, is once Antonio Banderas meets and decides that he has to prevent Ryan Reynolds, Samuel L. Jackson, and Salma Hayek from preventing his ultimate sinister, villainous plan of destroying all of Europe, save Greece. And basically, you know, this is very much like the first one. It's set up so that it kind of mirrors real world events. Before the pandemic, you know, how the EU had placed a lot of sanctions upon Greece, you know, because of their national debt, and basically promoted all these austerity measures upon Greece. And so, just as they did in the first movie with war crimes in The Hague, they take these real world events, although, you know, now, you know, look back upon historically, basically, you know, much more set back in history than dealing with COVID. But when this was filmed, still a very hot issue, especially for those in Greece facing these austerity measures. Now, most likely, you know, due to the COVID, far worse in real life today, as many countries, their economic, you know, pipeline of tourism having been cut off for so long. Now, Morgan Freeman is in this. He plays Ryan Reynolds' father, and we find out is one of the premier bodyguards, the most famous bodyguard perhaps, in this Hitman Bodyguards world or universe, which they do expand upon much more than the first movie. You can see that they're trying to kind of maybe do a John Wick kind of franchise out of this, and it has potential, although it was a little bit pigeonholed by the first movie, which brings up a couple of flaws, you know, questions from the first movie into the second movie. There's no longer any mention of Ryan Reynolds and his ex-wife. It had looked like at the end of the first movie, where she worked for, I think, Interpol or Scotland Yard or something like that, where they might get back together. And at the end of the first movie, she definitely said, after helping her save Samuel L. Jackson and getting him to testify at the UN assembly, I guess, She was going to help Ryan Reynolds' character get back his AAA bodyguard status, which is, what he had always wanted, having lost it due to Sam Jackson's hitman's killing of one of his primary people that he was supposed to protect back in the first movie. In this movie, however, as I said, we open up with him in therapy talking about how he's still having nightmares of Samuel L. Jackson's character destroying his AAA rating. So it basically erases the end of part one, where his ex-wife was going to try to get him back his bodyguard AAA status ranking. And then also kind of erases her. She's never mentioned again in this movie, or the attempts that she had attempted to make to try to get him reinstated to that status, which looked like a done deal at the end of the first movie. In this one, he is still very much on the outs. We find out that the AAA bodyguard status is an actual thing and not just made up by Ryan Reynolds' character and his detective company. That his father actually had won it year after year after year, Morgan Freeman, and Morgan Freeman pretty much held sway over in the organization, stating that once Ryan Reynolds and Samuel L. Jackson and Salma Hayek come to him for help, that he will help his son, Ryan Reynolds, get back his AAA status, because he's doing such a good job protecting Samuel L. Jackson. And since Kiss the Girl have we seen Morgan Freeman do such an action role. Let me just say, of course it's a stunt double. He's like some 90 years old, and he mentions that in the film. But he's shooting, he's jumping, fighting throughout the end of the movie. He's not one of the primary stars, but very much like Antonio Bandera's, he gets plenty of screen time, and makes his presence known more than just a simple one-off cameo. So that's an excellent thing to see more of Morgan Freeman, especially at the age that he is, like Antonio Bandera's, still doing and taking on an action-like role. And again, Salma Hayek, of course, gets much, much more, basically from what you've seen of the trailer. She gets into some scraps, plenty of gunplay, etc. She does a fantastic job as well throughout this, along with Samuel L. Jackson and Ryan Reynolds. None of it feels forced or contrived. You don't feel like anybody's fighting for more screen time, or that anybody steals screen time away from anyone else. So these three in this movie, Salma Hayek, Samuel L. Jackson, and Ryan Reynolds, play very well together, and by the end of it can clearly be seen into possibly a third movie, depending on how well this one does and how well they've expanded this Hitman Bodyguards universe. So, I look forward, hopefully to more of Salma Hayek and Ryan Reynolds and Samuel L. Jackson as these characters continue in this world. So yes, it is a strong shock and thumbs up. Overall, again, like I said, the first 10 minutes, should have been cut out of this movie, because it really doesn't make a lot of sense, especially given the first movie. They could have just said that, hey, you have your AAA status, and Salma Hayek, just like in the first one, comes to Ryan Reynolds for help, which she does. It just gives Ryan Reynolds, to me, maybe a little bit too much of a crutch for her to play with, or, for him to play with, that, oh, I'm the wounded bodyguard, very much more so like the first one, whereas he could have been a more confident, the confident bodyguard coming in and saying, hey, you know, don't worry, I'll handle this and protect your husband and get him back. We'll get him back, you know. No, he's much more reluctant. It's like, oh, I can't do it. I don't have my AAA status. I'm not licensed, blah, blah, blah. You know, you see all that from the trailer. And that his psychologist tells him, hey, to forget about Bodyguard for a while, which he is sucked back into by Salma Hayek and this plan to save her husband. And then it really goes off the deep end once Antonio Bandera sets his sights on the three. All right, but overall, it is a very fun time. Well worth going to see at the theaters. I think it will show up eventually on HBO Max, I think. And, you know, definitely streaming within the next 2 months, of course. And, you know, go ahead and see it, especially if you loved the first one. You'll love this one even more. Unfortunately, not for children, as, you know, Samuel Jackson is known for his foul language. And Ryan Reynolds does pretty well, along with Salma Hayek, in keeping up with that potty mouth. So definitely not for small children, but still a fun time overall for the adults. All right, thank you so much. This is Trinidad, the Island Man, your Island Man here in Hawaii, saying mahalo and aloha.